Good morning, grade 10s. Let's discuss exam questions of the exponential function. So in this question, it's given to you that px is equal to k to the exponent of x plus q, and that's described by the following properties. K greater than 0, it means that the k, the base, must be positive, not 1, because if it's a 1, it's not exponential anymore. The x-intercept will be at 2 and 0. Horizontal asymptote is then y equals negative 9. Now they say write down the range of the p, the function. So because of my asymptote, because of the positive values and everything there, we can say then you take the asymptote and your graph will be above your asymptote there. So we can say then y is the element of negative 9 to positive infinity. Or you can say y is greater than negative 9. Next question there. They say now determine the equation of p of x. So now I know the q will be the asymptote. So I substitute the negative 9 into the q. Right. So that is then you substitute that and you get that equation. But you also know that the x and that's the y value will be the point. And it's passing here through the x-intercept 2 and 0. So that's my x and that's my y. So now I substitute the x and the y. So the y is then 0 and the x will be 2. So that's quadratic. Difference of squares, you factorize. And then you get the value of k is equal to 3. You're not going to take this one here because the base must be positive. And then the question is write down the equation. So I resubstitute and say then 3 to the x minus 9. That's the equation. Next question they say sketch the graph of p and you must show clearly the intercepts with the axis and the asymptote. So it must be x-intercept, y-intercept. Right, so let's have a look. Where will we start? If this is my equation now, you start with a q. The q is the asymptote. So that's my horizontal value there at negative 9. You must indicate that because the question states that. Then you can draw up a table once again. So you substitute the negative 2 into the place of x. 3 to the negative 2, it's 1 over 9. Minus the 9, it's negative 8, 9. Substitute the negative 1 into the x, so that's a third, minus the 9, minus 0, 8, 6, and so you carry on. Then you have to plot the points. So negative 2 is then negative 8, 9. Negative 1 is negative 8, 6. If you substitute the 0, it means then it's an intercept. So you must write down the coordinates, so it's 0 and negative 8. 1 will be negative 6, and then with this one you get a 0 for the y value, so that's my x-intercept, and you write the coordinates down. Question stated that, and then you join the dots. If I look at the next question, now the graph is given to you. The graph is given, and they stated that it's negative 2x plus 8. Now that's exponential once again, because the x is in the exponent. Then they also say that a will be intercept and b will be the x-intercept. First question, once again, write down the range. Now what do you know about this dotted line? It's the asymptote. Asymptote, it's the q value. So that means that's the 8. But what do you notice? The graph is below the asymptote. So that means if you write this down, we say now that your range must be the y values. It will be the y is less than the 8. Or if you use interval notation, you say start at negative infinity, you go up to 8. Why is it a round bracket? Because it's an asymptote. Right, it's not included then. Now the next question, determine the coordinates of p. Remember, coordinates is x and y. Look at the diagram. Position of p, x-intercept. How do we calculate x-intercept? X-intercept, you make y equal to 0. That's my equation there. So now you take the negative 2 to the x over positive 2 to the x. You rewrite, or you break it up into prime factors there, 2 cubed. Once the bases are the same, you take the exponents down, you drop them there, and then remember to write it in coordinate form. Next question. If the g is reflected over the x-axis, right? Form a new graph and we call that h. What is the equation? So what we will do there, reflection, now you must still remember, if it's reflected about the x-axis, my rule states the x stays the same and my y is getting the negative sign. We change the signs. So that means that is my g of x. My newly formed equation will y be negative. My x values stay the same. Now you take the negative and you divide through, so that negative and negative makes a positive. That negative with that positive makes a negative, and that's my newly formed equation. So basically you must know your rules for reflection there. Then the last question there. Explain why the x-intercepts of G and H are both at the B. So the reflected one and the other one. Now if you look at the coordinates of B, it will be 3 and 0. Now why will that be the same for the reflected as well? Because the y value there is a 0. Now if I reflect it in the x-axis, I must change the sign of the y. But because it's a 0, the sign got no effect on the 0. So that's why it will be the same. Right. If I look at the next question, that was November 2018. So now we combine this exponential with other graphs. In this case, we've got the parabola because it's a square, and that one we've got exponential graph. Right, that's the one we're doing now, but we combine that now with this. Then they say the A and the B are x-intercepts, and then that D is a y-intercept, and you know that C will be the turning point of that. E is then the 1 and the 3, so that's coordinates, a point on the parabola there. Right, let's look at the questions. First of all, they say, write down the coordinates of point D. Now, if you look at the position for D, D is then on the y-axis, and it's on the G graph. Now, my G graph is exponential. So that means that D is then the y-intercept. So how do we calculate y-intercept? So we do the y-intercept. We first identify that as the y-intercept. And we know the method will be x is equal to 0. So that's my equation of my G. My x value I will substitute there as 0. Any base to the 0 is 1. And then you minus that, you get negative 3. Once again, be careful. They say write down the coordinates. So it's D. Immediately must do the bracket. No equal sign there because it's coordinates. So x is 0 and the y will be negative 3. Next question. They say, right, let's write down the range. Now the range will be the y values. Now once again, you know to write down the range, you identify the asymptote. Now what will be the value there? The value of this asymptote will be my q value. So that means it's a negative 4. Now you look at the position of your graph. So that's negative 4. The graph is above the asymptote. So how will I write it down? I will say my y, which is my range, will be greater than my negative 4. You can't say equal because the negative 4 asymptote. Or you write them asymptote first, and then you go up to positive infinity. If we go to the next question, calculate now the coordinates of point A. Once again, identify where will point A be. A will be the x-intercept of your exponential and the parabola. So if I look at the two equations given, can you see? I don't know what is the A and the Q there, so I can't use the parabola there. So I must use the exponential graph. Once again, it's x-intercept. So what will I do for x-intercept? I make y equal to 0. So that's my y equal to 0. Take my constant over, so it's a plus 4. Because my x is in the exponent there, prime basis. So that will be 2 squared. Because that one is a fraction, it will be 2 to the negative x there. Once the bases are the same, you put them equal and you solve. Once again, they say a, coordinates, x then is negative 2 and the y is 0. Now, they say, find now the values of small a and small q. Now you must look, where will you find the small a and the q? Not on the diagram, but in the equation. So the a and the q belongs to the parabola. So, what must I do now? I know that that coordinate there, it's an x-intercept, that's negative 2. I also know that this is the line of symmetry. So that means the distance from A to O is the same as the distance from O to B, but opposite direction, so that coordinate will be plus 2. So x-intercepts are given. So to find then my A value, I will do the following. I will say y equals a, x minus the one intercept, x minus the second intercept. That's now parabola. Substitute my x-intercepts, and then I substitute a point, the 1 and 3, into the place of x and y. And that enables me to get the value of a. Take now the a value and you substitute it into the second row there. And that gives you then that q is equal to 4. Right, that is parabola. If I go further with this question, and now let's say determine the length of CD. Now you must remember length, distance, always positive. But let's have a look at the diagram. So I must calculate the length or the distance of CD. Now you see C, it's on the y-axis, so that's y-intercept of parabola. And D, it's y-intercept of exponential graph. So we already identified that point there as a 4, right, 0, 4. And this one I've calculated as 0, negative 4. But distance can't be negative, so that's why we will say now the following, and say we will say then 4 plus 4. So that's giving me 8 units, because my C was 0, 4, my D was 0, negative 4. You add the distances, so it's 8 units. Next question, they say, find now the equation of the straight lines through A and D. Once again, A, already calculate the coordinate there of A, it was negative 2, 0. And D, we've calculated as, what was the coordinates there? It was 0, negative 4. So we write it down once again. So that's my A coordinate, that's my D coordinate. I've got 2 points, I number them x1, y1, x2, y2. And a straight line, I know I must first calculate the gradient, difference in y over difference in x. So you say 0 minus that 4, and the negative 2 minus that, and that gives you then a negative 2. But I also realize that D will be the y-intercept for that line as well. So that will be my C value, my y-intercept. So that's why I substituted that negative 4 there. So that negative 2 is my gradient. And that's the equation of my straight line. If I go to the more interesting questions now, they say for which values of x, it's f of x greater than 0. Now you see it's f there. Now my f equation, it's the parabola. So if you look at that one, then I just redraw this one. So that's the parabola. That's my x-intercept, and that's my turning point, my y-intercept. Now they say f of x. Now f of x represent y. Greater than 0, state positive. Now once the y values are positive, it means the graph will be above the x-axis. Can you see there I've indicated that's on the x-axis, so it's 0 for y, then it will be positive y values, positive, 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 up to that one there, and thereafter it will be zeros, negatives. So to get that positive y, my x values will lie between that. So that means my x is greater than -2 and less than 2. Last question. For which values of x is f decreasing? Now decreasing means going down. So once again I redraw the sketch there. I know that's my turning point y-intercept. That's x-intercept, x-intercept. I start from this side. You see you're going up. Your y values is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So this is ascending. That's the turning point. After that fall, it's going down. See that my y value is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Now we're looking for the x value, so that's the turning point. It happens then at 0 for x. And if I go to the right hand side, which means bigger than 0, it means it's descending graph.